Welcome to the New Market Simulator Product Tour webinar, hosted by your friends at Sawtooth Software. My name is Megan Pites, and I am the Ingenuity Ambassador at Sawtooth Software. In our last webinar, we learned about the mechanics behind conjoint simulations from Keith Shun. This week, Brian McEwan, the Director of Client Services, is going to walk you through the capabilities of the New Market Simulator, which we just released earlier this year, and its new analysis and deliverables options. And if any of you have ever spoken with Brian, you know he is a resident expert on all of our products and services. So without further ado, take it away, Brian.
All right, thanks, Megan. So, like Megan said, this is going to be a lot less slides than what we did last week with Keith, and a lot more hands-on in the software. I'm going to just show you all the new stuff that we've added to the software and all the functionality and features and all the goodies that we've added. So just to highlight some of those first, the main difference right now that we've got with version 9 of our software is that the simulator is built in. It's going to be something that you launch from inside the software. It does still exist in a standalone form, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the client deliverables options. But we're going to hit some brand new functionality, things like doing some visualizations of the shares and utilities and things like that, and then some new fun tricks we've added for running simulations, such as considering external effects like product availability, product awareness, or some simulation tricks like top N. We'll talk about what that is in a little bit. And then we're going to talk about the new client options, about how you can deliver simulators faster and easier to your clients as well. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to version 9 of our software. With version 9, we've changed the name of the software. We used to call it SSI Web, and now we've changed it to Lighthouse Studio. The core functionality is still there. We're not changing the whole world on you. We just kind of wanted something that was a little more friendlier and easier to remember, rolls off the tongue a little easier. So I've got a study here that we programmed. This is our golf example, and that's a pretty normal survey. It's got a handful of segmentation questions about people's golfing habits, and then we've got a conjoint exercise here. I'll go ahead and open that up so you can see what's in here. It's pretty simple, small, nice design. We have a bunch of hypothetical brands, and then we have a statement about the performance if it drives 5, 10, or 15 yards further than the average golf ball. And then we have some prices that range from $4.99 up to $10.99. So pretty straightforward, simple study. And so one of the things that's changed before we even get into the simulator is how utility estimation is done. And so we have this new icon here. You can also access it under the analysis menu. But we have this idea behind this is kind of a more repository thing. In the past, you estimate utilities, we write them out to files, and you use those files in something else. In version 9, we have this new analysis manager, this repository of things, so that I can keep everything in the software without having to dump out files and mess up my folders and things like that. So we add analysis runs, and we choose the type of run they have. And so, for example, we'll run a quick counts run here. And our output's going to be the same as if you've ever used our software in the past. So our counts analysis is going to give us the relative counts. Per attribute, it's going to calculate our chi-squared statistics for these things. But the difference now is that I can have multiple runs. So maybe this is going to be my HB run, and so I'm going to set the type to HB, and all of our settings for HB are here and work pretty much exactly like it has in the past. I'm just going to go ahead and drop this down so things run a little faster here. We go ahead and run this. We get our same graph coming up to judge convergence, and everything is running exactly the same. The difference now is instead of writing these things out to a file, they're stored as part of my study here. And so I get my report with averages and individual things. One of the neat things of this area is this new utility report that we've built here. So instead of just looking at a spreadsheet, we can get kind of this visual screen here. So we get utilities, standard deviations, confidence intervals. We have a box plot over here. We can mess around with the graphing settings, and we can look at, for example, a histogram of brand. You can save these images. You can save these out to a spreadsheet, and you've got opportunities to use variables from your survey as either filters or segments. You can also do weighting. So it's a fun new area for visualizing the data, not having to take it out into some other piece of software in order to play around with it a little more. So that's a fun little addition we have in this area. We're going to go ahead and just use these utilities here in the simulator. So I'm going to close out of our analysis manager. And then the simulator is launched from this icon over here, the choice simulator icon. And so this is going to bring up a new window here. This is a bit of a change for us visually. We are following kind of the Microsoft Office type look with our menu up here. And so everything gets pushed forward automatically for me, which is a nice feature. You don't have to, again, write out those files, open up a separate piece of software, do all the importing. Things are just right here ready for me. So I'm going to go and just dive right in. I'm going to click the Add button up here, and I can start adding products now. Again, this is another upgrade from us in the past. If you're an old Smart user for running simulations, you had to use the level index for defining products, so you would have to type in like a 1 in brand in order to access brand 1. And you can still do that. You can type in a 1, but you can also do start typing in the letters, and it'll do a little search and narrow things down. You can also just use your mouse and click on things and double click. So if you're a keyboard and mouse person and you like to tab, or you'd rather use your mouse, we've got you covered. Just a couple products in here. We're gonna treat High Flyer as kind of the elite, expensive product, and then we're gonna toss in each of our brands. We'll make this one kind of a middle of the road option, and we'll do Eclipse, another middle of the road, and then we'll make High Flyer. In the storyline of our tutorials, High Flyer is the new entrant, so they've got a good ball at a cheap price, but not a lot of brand equity. So we can run our simulation here. We're using the same good algorithms we've had in the past. We default to randomized first choice, and we get out our shares, standard errors of those predictions, confidence intervals. We have some default graphs that come up over here that you can switch between. Pie and horizontal and vertical bar graphs for things. So core functionality is still there. We're just doing it in kind of a friendlier interface and a nicer look and feel to it. That, as far as similarities in Smart, that's everything is nice and good like we've done before. And now we just get to move on to all the fun stuff that we've added to the software. So I'm going to hit some of the ideas first, and then I'm going to go into scenario-specific settings. So one of the cool things to talk about is the idea behind having prohibitions in your simulator now. You've always been able to add prohibitions in your design. So for instance, we might have a client who says, High Flyer Pro should never show up at the $4.99 price. That's just a logical combination. And despite our best efforts to tell them that it's not that big of a deal and people will be able to evaluate the option at $4.99, they're insistent. So we can put that in as a prohibition. Well, in order to prevent our client from running simulations that violate those prohibitions, you can actually formally identify them here in the software. So we could say, High Flyer Pro should not show up with $4.99, and that's now a prohibition. And we can choose how strict we want to be on this. So down here under this enforcement behavior, by default, a prohibition will just put up a little warning and say, hey, this is a prohibited combination. But we can actually check this box and we can prevent it from running so the shares won't even be simulated at all. So that's another common feature of the new simulator, is a lot more customization of the permissions, and you can lock things down and prevent people from doing things that they shouldn't have. And so you can do these type of prohibitions here. We could also do cross-concept prohibitions, just like we can do in our design. So we can say maybe High Flyer Pro at $49.99 shouldn't show up against Long Shot at $10.99. And we can highlight these here and link the prohibition, so it now becomes a cross-concept prohibition. So either of those could occur by themselves, but that particular combination can't be simulated. We won't leave those in here, but just to show how they work. You can also do the same interpolation stuff before. So, for example, for our pricing attribute, we can tell it that it's continuous, and instead of using that 1, 2, 3, 4 index, we can type in $4.99, $6.99, $8.99, $10.99 in order to let things interpolate a little easier for us if we so desired. Now,
hey Brian.
Within, yeah, go ahead.
Jump in real quick. We had a question come in about the number of, if there is a maximum number of products that you can simulate in the simulator, and there is not. It's unlimited.
Yeah, if you're an old smart user, we used to limit you to 100 products in a scenario, and we don't have that kind of arbitrary cap anymore. There's probably some point with thousands of products where things would crawl and slow to a halt, and it probably isn't a good idea anyway if you only sampled a couple hundred people to simulate thousands of products, but there isn't a hard stop in the software anymore. So yeah, that's a great question.
Thanks, Brian.
Yep. Now moving along some of these specific settings here is, as I mentioned earlier, all your survey information is going to be brought forward in. So we had a couple different variables, different questions that we asked about, for example, the frequency that you golf and the skill of your golf and whether or not you do public and private courses. So I can toggle these things if I check the gender box and then I rerun my simulation. What I'm going to get now is a segmented simulation report. So I still have my totals column right here, but then it's going to break it out into the categories we had in the survey. And so this can be used to segment, or it can be used just to filter. And so if I only check one of the boxes, then it's going to break out males by themselves and just lump everyone together into this other column. So segmenting is nice and easy. It doesn't have to be part of your survey as well. The software does support merging in external data. So if you have a database with other information, or you use some other software for part of your survey, you can merge it in and still use it here in the simulator. And then weights are the same way. If we had a weight, then, which I don't have in this survey, we just select it here and it would multiply the shares by the weight and give us a weighted prediction for things. Now the funnest part for me is this external effects area here. And so external effects are the idea that we understand that we only really captured preference information as part of our survey. We know that there are other things in the real world that can affect what cereal box someone pulls off the shelf, or what decision that they make. So the idea behind external effects is to use some nice defensible information to try to bolster our model and improve its predictive capabilities. Brian Orm is going to be going into these a little more detail, like Megan mentioned in our next webinar, but I'm going to just kind of briefly go over them and show you how they work. So the first one is this idea about product availability. So we turn that on and go to the settings. We have a couple different ways we can think about product availability in the market. The first one is kind of just really high up in the sky, market level, how much are products available. Now it doesn't make sense to do this in a single one-off simulation. So what we do is we start sending people on shopping trips, and by default we're going to set that number to be 500. So we're going to simulate you going and shopping and making a choice over and over and over again. And what we're going to do is that we have the ability to change how often these products are available in your choices. So if, for example, product 1, it's ubiquitous, it's in every store. It's always available. We could set its availability to be 100%. And if maybe product 4, they have some distribution issues, they're constantly out of stock, there's only a 1 in 4 chance that the product's actually going to be on the shelf when you go to the store to get it. So we can do this availability from a market level stance. We can get a little more specific if we have the data to back it up, though, and we can think about, rather than market availability, we can think about particular store availability. So we could do something like maybe 3 stores, they're golf pro shops in the region that we're interested in, or something like that. And we can think about the probability that people are going to walk into that store. So this is almost like a 2-stage simulation where someone, on their shopping trip, they have to enter a store first, and then inside that store, the products available to them can be different. So, for example, with store 1 and store 2, maybe one of these products isn't found in those stores, and product 4 is only found in store 3. So again, you've got to have the data to back this type of simulations up. But if you do have it, it's pretty defensible and pretty reliable information in order to consider availability effects. But the best stage of it is to get even more granular and to use per respondent store visit probabilities. Now this definitely, again, requires the data to back it up. You would have had to ask a survey question or somehow know what places people shop at. If you do, then you can import that information in here, and you would import them as probabilities here. So, for example, I'm just going to bring up a spreadsheet that I have in Excel and show you an example of what things might look like. So this would have come from somewhere, either in the survey or something that I've come up with, where we have the probabilities that people go into different stores matched up by their respondent number. And so if I can import that file here, our store data. And now what's going to happen is every time I go on my shopping trip, for example, this first respondent, they told us, or we somehow know, that they only visit store 1. So as far as their product availability is concerned, they're going to never have the opportunity to purchase a product 2 option because it's not in the store that they walk into. So again, you have to have the data to back this up, but if you do, it's a really neat and easy way. Doing this availability stuff in the past can be pretty tricky. You would have had to mess with people's utility scores directly to try to enforce this availability effects. We built it right in, and it makes life a whole lot easier if this is the type of stuff that you have the data to back up. Moving on from availability, we have awareness, and they're kind of related, but rather than thinking about the whole shopping trip and going into stores and things like that, we just have binary data now. We have 0, 1 data of whether or not someone is maybe aware. So if maybe I asked an awareness question of my survey, have you ever heard of the following brands, or would you ever consider purchasing these brands, or something like that. I can bring in some data here, and again, I'll show you an example of what it might look like in Excel, where, again, we have our respondent numbers here, and then we just have these awareness questions for, in this case, each brand, where a 1 indicates they're aware and a 0 would indicate they're not aware. And basically what that does is if we import that here, it would just turn off the awareness. So essentially we use now a subset of the products for particular respondents. So again, you have to have the data to back it up, but if you do, then it's a really defensible way to bolster your predictions of what people would choose rather than just using utility scores. And then the last one to hit is a share adjustment. And so this is the idea where we might not have something as nice and clean as availability or awareness, but we know that there's something in the market that is causing a particular product to maybe do better or worse. Maybe there's effectiveness of sales force, or there's a promotion going on, or something like that that just makes a brand or a product better than just the utilities would indicate. And so what we can do is we can change utilities, we can give a little boost or have a product take a hit just to its total overall utility. And this actually has a little solver here as well. If we had target shares, so right now you can see our predictions are these columns over here. If maybe these were a little off and we wanted, say, 10%, 30%, and then 15, another 40, and 5, or something like that. What we can do is that the software will do this little iterative process where it'll try to come up with utility adjustments in order to hit those target shares as close as it can, and again, trying to make it so that we're not adding huge amounts and things like that. So it comes up with these utilities where these products need to get a little boost, the none option needs to get a little hit, and if we use those utilities, we turn off the other ones here, then we're going to hit those shares, and we can maintain those utility adjustments moving forward as we continue on and do additional things. Now, this one we're moving a little further away from being fully defensible about things. So this is something that you want to use with care. You want to make sure you understand the ramifications, that you're kind of changing things, but if you've got a defensible reason behind it, we built it into the software to make it a little easier. And then for historical purposes, we've also kept this aggregate share adjustment. This is what was the external effects adjustment back in SMART. And we even pop up a warning where we say, you know, you really shouldn't be using this. If you have external effects, you want to use the superior methods, the better, more defensible methods. But this is the idea where we just do an aggregate share adjustment. The model predicts 20%. We want it to be something else, and so we multiply that share by something and redistribute proportionally the share to other things. You're a bit on shaky ground doing it, but we left it in since that's what we had in the past. But all those other methods are much better. Okay. Over here in the miscellaneous area, we have the exponent. This is one of the things that Brian will be talking about a little bit more. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but the exponent is essentially a modifier, a multiplier for all the utilities. And so the idea behind tuning the exponent is that a common thing is we might feel like people are just a bit too sure of themselves while they're taking a survey. They're not doling out $20 bills. They're not swiping their card. It's a bit easier just to click a radio button and choose something. So people might just be a little bit too sure of themselves in the survey. So what we can do is tweak the exponent or the scale factor of the utilities. And the idea behind this is going with a factor greater than 1 is going to make the scale of the utilities larger. It's going to make the differences between products bigger. And going to a value below 1 is going to kind of soften the differences. It's going to pull everything closer towards the mean, and the share differences are going to get smaller. There is an option to include individual results here. So if we run our simulation, we do have individual results now where we have each respondent ID, we have the simulated, the probabilities of choice for each respondent. This is great if you're the type of person who takes the conjoint model and puts it into a larger spreadsheet of predictions and things like that. You might be interested in this area. And then the idea behind netted shares is this is something we borrowed from the MBC software, if anyone is familiar with that. And the idea is that maybe if I have a product 5 here that is also a long shot, and it's going to be maybe a cheaper option here, I can net those together. So instead of always seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, and the none, I can net it together, and I can call it long shot net. And I can say long shot net is just going to be product 4 and product 5 together. And so if I rerun the simulation now, I'm going to get a net result here for both of my products together. So again, not anything earth-shattering. It's just a nice little quality of life improvement for those people that might take advantage of it. Some other things to talk about. We do have, you can choose your different simulation methods here. So we have share preference first choice, we have purchase likelihood, you have calibrated utilities, and you can also just look at the utilities values themselves. And this range behavior, this is kind of a coming soon feature here. So one of the neat things about SMART was that it could do sensitivity mode. And so what sensitivity mode did, I'm going to go ahead and remove that product here. And what I'm going to do is use this range function here. And you can see this range function takes in a start value, an end value, and a step size, and then it's also a default value. And that's going to be used for more advanced searches that are coming later. So this is our sensitivity analysis. So if you used SMART in the past, you had to actually toggle between running a simulation and running sensitivity and running an optimization search. And we're meshing sensitivity and optimization search together here. So if I type in a range, I can say, let's start at level 1 and go to level 4. And what's going to happen, let me turn off my netted share here, since it doesn't exist. What's going to happen is this is going to keep products 1 through 3 are going to stay constant, and product 4 is going to be run at each of its price levels to kind of give us a pseudo demand curve for what we'd expect to happen here. So we can see, and it's a little easier to see in a graph here, but at price level 1, we have a particular share, and then the share drops at level 2, level 3, and level 4. So this is a fun little way of thinking about sensitivity, price sensitivity, or any type of sensitivity. We could change the performance attribute or anything like that. What's going to happen in the future is hopefully within maybe the next few months or 6 months or so, we're currently in the process of converting all the optimization algorithms we have back in SMART and bring those into this new simulator. And so the optimization work is where you, instead of trying to figure out, well, what's the result of this one simulation, you say, given this scenario, what's the configuration I could come up with in order to optimize or reach some sort of goal? And that might be maximizing the share that this product receives. It might be maximizing the revenue, maximizing the profit. And so this range function is going to work the same way, where you're going to, what would happen is we'd say price levels 1 to 4 are an acceptable range. We'd identify which one of those goals we're after, and it's going to run some algorithms and do a product search and come back and say, here's the best configuration, here's the second best, here's the third best, in order to give you an idea of the best type of things that you could run, rather than just what's the result of this one scenario. So that's coming soon. Right now the developers are working on an interface in order to add revenue and cost information so that normal simulations can output revenue and profit. And then, again, hopefully soon we'll have our first algorithm put in order to do the optimization stuff. And we've got lots of fun new ideas for doing multi-objective and genetic algorithm things that it's probably going to take us into 2017 before we finally get done with all the good stuff we want to add. So it's another exciting area of what's going to be coming. I did see the question where someone was wanting to check if we can use the segments and filters in that utility and importance area. The answer is yes, you can. If we go back into the utility report and maximize this, we can turn on the segments. So if we, for example, look at venue, we can refresh this. And again, we get our total column right here, and then we look at the public courses and the private courses, and anyone who's other in there. Our visualization over here, it does have this drop-down box here, so it defaults to total. If we want to just look at public courses, we can look at that. Again, you can change to your histograms. You have the same thing. You can toggle between public, private, and other courses. With your histograms, you can toggle between your attributes and the levels. With the histograms, you can actually even get fancy, and you can do fixed width or a specific count, or just let us automatically decide what the bin widths are. So it's a pretty robust little visualization area. So hopefully that answers your question that, yep, you can segment and filter in this area.
Hey Brian, one of the big benefits of the new simulator tool is the randomized first choice being a part of the Excel plugin. Before we get into the deliverables, can you talk about the difference between each of the different simulation methods in terms of first choice versus share of preference versus randomized first choice?
Yeah, sure. So the idea behind different simulation methods is not that necessarily any one is better, you know, I'm making quotation marks with my fingers here, anyone is better than the other ones. They just kind of have different assumptions behind them. And so first choice is kind of the easiest one to think about. It's the one we always start off when we're teaching people about simulators and things. And first choice is this idea that people are going to choose the option that brings them the most utility. And so, you know, we have utilities for brands and performance and price. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say, you know, I'm essentially walking around to every person that I surveyed and built a model for them. And I'm saying, hey, I've got these 4 products here. Here they are, High Flyer Pro, Magnum Force, etc. And I'm just walking up to each one of them and I'm saying, which one are you going to choose? And the way I'm going to predict which one they point at with the first choice is just to add up the utilities, and whichever one is highest, that's the one I predict they point to. So it's a very simple way. It's also potentially a little too simple in certain circumstances. We know in some markets like toothpaste, for example, I don't always choose the same toothpaste when I go to the store. I tend to probably, on average, get the same one, but sometimes I just shake things up a bit because there's really not a huge difference between types of mint toothpaste for me. Maybe for some of you, hopefully I didn't offend anyone who's really particular about their toothpaste out there. But for me personally, it's not a huge issue. And so first choice just might be a little too extreme, where it says, one option has just a teeny tiny more utility, but 100%, yep, that's the one that Brian chooses. So that's the kind of thinking that lends you to the share of preference method. And that one is a vote splitting method. So rather than predicting that I choose the top utility option, I basically now am thinking about what's the probability that I point at each of these options and say that's the one I want. And so if one product has a much higher utility value than another, when we run it through the formula that we use, it's going to have a very high probability of being chosen. Where if 2 options are very close in utility, then the probability is going to be close to a 50-50 split, or maybe a 25-25-25-25 split in this case. And so it's this idea of vote splitting and how confident are we in predicting which one I'm going to point at. There's some math issues with that, especially with product substitutions and things. That's probably not the right time to talk about in this webinar, but for that reason, what we typically recommend is the randomized first choice. What it does is it runs a simulation typically hundreds of thousands of times, and every time it runs the simulation, it sprinkles a little bit of random error on everyone's utilities. And what that does is kind of gives us the best of both worlds, where every one individual simulation is a first choice simulation. So it doesn't matter if I have a lot of redundant products, I don't artificially boost the chance that I would choose something from a family of products that are very similar. But it also lets me split my vote, because that random error will sometimes let an inferior product win. And again, it's the idea that if 2 things are very close together and I'm sprinkling random error on there, each one's going to win over those hundreds of thousands of simulations. Each one is going to win about an equal number of times. But if there's a really big utility difference, then it takes a whole lot of random error. It takes a special sprinkle in order to get that inferior product to win. And so I come out with a vote splitting simulations that look like I'm splitting votes, whereas each individual time I'm actually running a first choice simulation. So it's kind of an advanced topic, but we definitely have, if anyone's interested in reading more, we have papers on it and things like that. It's one of the things that we cover in a bit more detail in our choice modeling workshop we've got one of those coming up in Anaheim in May. So we go into more detail on those. I will go ahead and mention purchase likelihood. Purchase likelihood is kind of a different beast. Rather than a competitive scenario where I'm going to point at one of the things, what it does is simulates a 0 to 100 purchase likelihood value. And it's really only appropriate if you ask purchase likelihood questions in your survey and actually run some calibration steps in order to kind of change the utility from predicting choices to predicting that 0 to 100 share. So the software can do that. It's a little extra work, not quite as automated, but if you do ask those questions, then purchase likelihood can be something relevant. If you don't do the purchase likelihood calibration steps, then you're going to get 0 to 100 scores, but they don't really mean anything. And, an 80 is just kind of an 80 that came out of the formula. We had another question came up that says, you mentioned that the estimation process is now different. Can you show how to run the estimation if you have external survey data? So the estimation is different. If we close out of the simulator here, the estimation process is different in the sense that I'm doing everything from this analysis manager area. And for example, counts analysis, the only really thing we could do with external data with counts is just to put a banner on things. And so, for example, if we did this income, it's going to give me a little warning, and it's going to say, whoa, you're changing stuff. It's going to change this report, and I can either delete my existing stuff and overwrite it, or I can create a new one. I'm cool with deleting that. I didn't have a special tie to that counts run. And so if I run this now, I'm going to get my counts results, but now they're going to be broken up. Again, this idea of total and then each of the categories right here. So if income was part of my survey, it's just there. It's in my data. If it's something that came from external database or another survey software, something like that, the way that you get this into the software is under the field get data area. We have this option here to merge external data. And so all you have to do is just set up a CSV file that would have the same respondent numbering that's inside Lighthouse, and then would have the data in subsequent columns. So if we look at the data, for example, so this would look exactly the same. The net result of merging in would make this look exactly the same. We would just have a respondent number column with our respondent numbers here, and then we would just have a column in our CSV of frequency, skill, venue, gender, etc. And we'd merge it in, and it would just become part of our data, and everything from that point on works exactly the same. It doesn't really matter if I asked it in my survey, if I merged it in later. It's just all there ready for me to use. So hopefully that answers your question. If we come back into the simulator now, what we can talk about next is deliverables and things for our clients. And we'll talk about this reporting area first and the client simulator area after that. So we've already hit this utility report where we can do some visualizations and segmenting and things like that. The next thing's the Excel report is just an idea of dumping some simulation results out to Excel. And so if we run our simulation, we can create an Excel report here. And the idea is that you're probably not going to give this as is. You're probably going to want to do a little bit along with it, but it's just a way to kind of facilitate and save you some extra steps. So, for example, we just have one scenario right now that has product shares. It's going to run, because this was a sensitivity run, it's going to run out the values at the different, so a product for, oh, sorry, I switched it to purchase likelihood, so I was just moderately confused for a second. I'm like, wait, these aren't adding up to 100.
I was too, so
yeah. Yeah, so this was purchase likelihood. So what it's doing is it's running sensitivity mode. So price 1, price 2, price 3, and it's just running the purchase likelihood predictions, and then broken out by I think gender was turned on as a segmentation variable. Or no, I'm filtering on males. That's what we had set up right now. So it's just a way to give you some starting points to excel if so desired. Then one of the next things that's going to be released probably in the next few months is going to be an automated PowerPoint report. And again, what this is going to do is give you some starting points. It's going to give you some options to do some graphs and some things of the utilities and importances, and just set some stuff up by default that you're probably going to want to take and tweak a little bit, but making it so that you don't have to start from scratch.
And that is actually available as of now, Brian. It was released while we were on this conversation. If you have a subscription that allows you to access to the choice simulator, you can now download version 1.1. And like Brian mentioned, it has the ability to export to a PowerPoint. The randomized first choice simulation method is now using multiple processing, so it's a little bit quicker. And there are some other additional benefits as well that will be posted up to the website.
That's awesome. Well, cool.
Yeah. Brian, do you want to go back and show the share of preference and then that export to the Excel report? I think that's what most people are probably expecting to see.
Yeah, let's change it, and then we'll just turn off the segmentation stuff here. So we'll rerun it, and then I'm still in sensitivity mode. Let's just change this back to a static definition here. Okay, so we dump that out to Excel. The other thing, actually, let me create another scenario. I'm going to duplicate this, and we'll increase the price to maybe the $8.99 price here. So we run these simulations. You can actually create the Excel report so that it does a little comparison thing. So we can say, let's use the first scenario as the base case, and what that's going to do, we'll overwrite that previous one. So what that's going to do is give us kind of the base case and then comparison to my scenario, and then because I checked that box and said this is the also give me in comparison to my base case, it kind of says, okay, assuming that this was 0, here's your changes, the relative changes rather than the absolute share predictions. So again, just a neat little way of saving you some steps and giving you some really nice points for things you might want to continue on down and do. All right. Let's hit client simulators now. So simulators are awesome, but one of the best things to be able to do is to deliver a simulator to your client and let them dive in and have fun and spend time running simulations and things. So to facilitate that, 2 options are currently implemented in the software, with a third one is again coming soon. Let's talk about the Excel simulator first. What this is going to do, again, if anyone's familiar with the MVC software, our goal here is not to necessarily create the thing that you actually deliver to your client. You're not going to export this and slap it right into an email and say, here's your simulator. You're going to want to pretty things up a little bit and brand it and add some stuff to it. What we're trying to do here is save you the hours of time writing the formulas and creating the spreadsheet to toggle on and off products and run the math and things like that. And so you set a set of utilities for the simulator, and then this is something that's really, really cool. We have written an Excel plugin now, kind of similar to Solver or other things that you can add onto Excel, where we're actually going to let you do randomized first choice. In the past, randomized first choice, well, even currently, randomized first choice is a very computationally intense algorithm because you have to estimate this particularly shaped random error distribution in order to do that sprinkling on things. So it's really computationally intense. And so what we've done is we've offloaded that using some of our own code in this plugin so that we can run stuff much more efficiently than calculating the error inside cells of Excel. And so you can now do randomized first choice as part of your simulations. So we'll toss a couple of products in here. I'm not going to worry about segmentation and weighting things right now. We'll go ahead and create it. And then what we get, so what we get here is a simulator that, this is, again, not what you're going to deliver to people. This is kind of the working behind the scenes page that we want things to change to. And I think I actually don't have the updated randomized first choice plugin turned on right now. Let me whip that up again. We'll switch to share preference just to show what happens here. And so this is the workhorse page. This is the one where we would put some type of really attractive front page that has drop-down boxes and check boxes and maybe some graphs and things like that. And that page, as my customer interacts with that page, that is going to modify these settings under here. So if they turn a product off and we set that to 0, throughout these other tabs down here, it takes the respondent utilities, any filters and weights, what the configurations of the products are, and then we run the math back here to get you to a point where you have shares, and all that gets returned to this front page. So you would put an additional page on here that modifies this, and then you would pull forward these shares of preference and potentially these standard errors onto your front page. So again, we're not quite doing all the work. One of the things about custom Excel simulators is that you customize them and you brand them and things like that. But again, we're going to save we're going to save you all the yucky time of setting it up and writing formulas and double checking the math and things like that. There's a question that came up about when creating an Excel simulator, can we add more than one weighting variable? Right now, it is a single select option. So segmentation, you can include multiple things, but right now weights are calculating just one number of one weight in the simulator. So if you had a bunch of variables, you would have to calculate kind of an overall weighting thing to bring in here. So that's our Excel simulator. Now, to try to convince you that Excel simulators are maybe a thing of the past, what I'm going to show off now is the option to create a standalone simulator package. And so what this is doing is I'm going to take this piece of software and what I've set up, and I'm going to package it up into a single file that I can deliver to one of my clients or colleagues in order to allow them to run their own simulations. And the best part about it is this is now free. In the past, we've charged, you had to purchase a license file for someone to use the simulator in a standalone form, and we've changed that and just made it free. So you'll be able to dump out simulator packages, and then if your client, they will need to download and install our software, but they won't need to be licensed in order to open up your simulations that you've created. And so it allows you to include specific utility runs. You can set it up with default scenarios. And then the coolest part is right here under the permissions, where we talked about how you can lock things down. And we get really specific in this permissions area. And so you can get to the point where they can't do anything except run the simulation scenarios that you have set up. So you can remove things, you can remove the ability to add and duplicate, rename, change utility runs, you can turn off the reporting area for people, you can turn on and off viewing and modifying the segments, the netted share stuff, the exponent, the awareness and availability. We give you full control over changing things kind of between a full read modify to a read only to a completely hidden, where they don't even know that it's something to be seen. And the last thing you can do is you can specify an image, and what we do is we bump up the bottom of it a little bit and toss in your image down here so that you can brand this before you deliver it to people. So that's something new that we're really excited about, is the ability to just dump out as many simulators as you want and provide a very powerful, robust, attractive-looking simulator to your clients without really all that much effort on your own. We just have a few minutes left, and so what I'm going to do is jump back into a slide and just talk a little bit about the future for things. So we've already talked about PowerPoint reports, and we can check that now and say that's there, that's done. Another thing that's coming soon is going to be the ability to push utilities and simulation scenarios up into our web-based simulator. That's located at sawtoothsimulator.com, and it's just a separate web-based, kind of simplified simulator. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles. It doesn't do the external effects and the sensitivity mode and stuff like that, but it's a nice, simple, attractive-looking simulator that some people like to use. We want to implement running scenarios concurrently, especially once we get into the product optimization things, having all those tabs churning in the background at the same time. It's going to be really neat. We want to implement an exponent calculator. We showed you the utility adjustment calculator where you put in target shares and it solves it for you. We want to do the same thing for that exponent adjustment. And then we already mentioned the ASM, the Advanced Simulation Module. This is our optimization algorithms. And what's cool about the current setup of our licenses, if you're on annual subscriptions, we don't have to wait and do a big release of the ASM anymore. We're just going to start releasing things as they come. So as we mentioned, hopefully in anywhere few to 6 months, we'll have our first exhaustive algorithm in there for searching, and then we're going to be continually porting the other hill climbing methods and the genetic algorithms we have, and the multi-objective stuff that's going to be even new and improved. So we've got at least the next year already fully mapped out for what the developers are going to be doing related to the simulator. So that's a whole lot of fun. As far as pricing goes, if you are on either an individual component subscription, so like you just have a CBC license, or you're on one of our multi-license suites, this new simulator is built in for free. You can use it inside of Lighthouse, or you can use the standalone version. If you want to add the ASM, we are still selling it right now. It does work inside the old Simulator Tool Smart. That license is $2,500 per year. We give you a 50% discount if you currently have any conjoint subscription. So it would be $2,500 if you're using older licenses and you just want to add on the new simulator and the advanced simulation module. If you're on a current subscription, you get 50% off. And then again, the standalone installs of the new simulator for your clients are free, and that's going to extend to the advanced simulation module. Once the new simulator has its optimization algorithms, you will be able to dump out standalone simulator packages, and your client will be able to use those optimization algorithms. So that's a big change from the past. It's something we're super excited about and hope that brings a lot of value to people who are interested in those optimization things. So with that, I think we're done with the product tour. If you have any questions about anything, if it's mathy, if it's salesy, if it's you just want to ask us how our day is going, feel free to reach out to me. I'm Brian at sawtoothsoftware.com, and Megan is Megan at sawtoothsoftware.com. And we'd love to talk to you more, and we can even set you up with free trials of stuff if you want to take the new simulator for a spin and you're using some older licenses purchased years ago or something like that. So please reach out to us with any questions or quote requests or anything that you need.
All right, I think that that's it. Thanks a lot, Brian, and thanks everybody for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you at the next Sawtooth Software webinar.